Welcome to the One Player Podcast, the show on solitaire board games. I'm your host, Albert, and this is episode 351.
What lies behind you pales in comparison to what lies inside of you.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting, but really, what lies beneath you? That's what everybody wants to know. What lies beneath?
That's true.
And that's why we're talking about it today.
I suppose beware a calm surface, you never know what lies beneath.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Like fish, for example, or muck.
Sure, I'm confident that's what it's talking about.
Oh, yeah, muck is the worst. Yeah, you ever step in like still waters and you find that it's mucky? Oh, gross. I don't like it. I don't, Anyway, so this week we are talking about a game book called What Lies Beneath. It is a game book published by Fervent Workshop Games and written by and designed by Chris Scaffidi. This is actually a game that was sent to me. They sent me a review copy. They said, "Hey, can we send you this?" And I said, "Hey, sure, I'll try it out. Sounds interesting."
And I really think you're underselling it by just writing it also as a game book. It is a solo dungeon crawler that happens to be an A-book.
Yeah, I mean, well, most game books are solo by definition, almost. Not all of them, but most. But you're right. Yes, it is a solo dungeon crawler. It's actually a pretty cool one. I liked it. We'll get more into the details of it. But you're right. Maybe I am underselling it. It is a book. I have a physical copy. You could also get a PDF. Let's do things in order, though. This is a game in which you wake up in a dungeon and
I will say, by the way, your comment
explore.
of you can get as a PDF, you can even get the free preview as a PDF.
Oh, okay. I did not realize that. So you can check it out. Different ways. Yeah, you're a person that wakes up in a dungeon with no recollection of what's going on. It's a fantasy setting, and you want to get out and get your memory back. That's basically the summary of what the game is. It's a game book, though, which means you're flipping back and forth through pages and making choices and reading a lot of narrative text and even building a character with character sheet. So there you go. That's my summary. Components are just as easy. You get a book or a PDF, depending on what version you have. That's the whole thing, a book. You'll need to supply some other components beside the book. You'll need some dice, character sheet, which you could print out or just write on a piece of paper yourself, and maybe a bookmarker, and pen. That's what I think. Pencil, really, because you do erasing in this, and you change some of your skills. But let's talk about the book and less about the pencils and dice. It is, I don't know how many pages it is. It's not numbered. Their entries are numbered, and it goes up to about 250-ish. I'm guessing it's about 150 to 200 page book. There's also an appendix at the end that's about 15 pages. So that's the size of the book. It's a good size. It's about, it's not it's a paperback. It's bigger than the small paperbacks. It's like A5-ish almost in size. And it is all black and white inside with illustrations. The pages sort of look like parchment. It's well laid out. It looks really nice. I like it. It's always weird with things like this to talk about the components separate from the game because they are basically one and the same almost.
Well, I think the components in this case really subsumed by how easy it is to use the book, what the art of the book is, what the graphic design is.
Yeah, and I kind of think we'll get into rules, or talk about the rules book and how readable the rules are. It's kind of it overlaps a whole lot.
Well, let's just move into
worth
the
mentioning.
Rules,
yeah, the dice though, it is worth mentioning that component. They suggest 12 millimeter dice, not the larger 60 millimeters, and it does actually matter in this game. So yeah, we'll get into that soon. The theme, I think the theme comes out great in this game. You're crawling through a dungeon, or not crawling. You're walking and sneaking by sometimes, and getting out of the dungeon and exploring the outer world. And you have no idea who you are, and because you're reading a story, I think that comes out pretty well. Also, the skill checks that happen in this game, I feel, are very add to the thematicness of the game. There's 3 types of skill checks: strength, dexterity, and wits. And and I'll get into those in a bit for sure. But I think they also feel thematic because of the way they work. So I think it's a good game for theme. If you ever played a game book, say Choose Your Own Adventure, you kind of have an idea what it's like. This is more beefy than a Choose Your Own Adventure for sure. If you remember, probably it was last year, we talked about the Fabled Lands game book series. It's more akin to that, but not quite as complex, not quite as a free form where there you could explore anywhere you want, but pretty similar. Okay, so rules. So as I was saying, it's a book. The rule book is really readable. It's really nice. I like the fonts they use and all that. The layout. There's pictures everywhere. Small little pictures that look nice and add to the gameplay somewhat. When you start reading from the get go, you're in the game, and I really like how they did this. They have you roll your character, and you tells you pick your character by rolling dice, choose which one you are, write down your attributes in the sheet, and proceed to playing. It doesn't really tell you anything about how it's going to work. And then the first entries you're reading after that will tell you, oh, here's an encounter. You have to fight this rat. Go ahead and roll for combat. And the very next page, it now explains how rolls for combat work. So you kind of work through that. You learn the mechanics. Then it teaches you how the dexterity rolls work by doing another skill test. And then finally how the wit rolls work. And so it explains everything gradually and easily, and it's simple. All the entries have italicized text, which are the story and the flavor text, and then non-italicized text, which are rules text. Things that you have to do, or when you have options, they're written also not italic, sometimes in bold and brackets and different things to signify it. Telling you like what your choices are and what to turn to. I like how they do the choices here. Instead of giving you three choices and say just pick one, they're sequential and say either choose the first one or move on to the second one. So you kind of have to choose which to do, and you're going to do that and move on. It almost doesn't make any difference, but sometimes you can't do them. It'll say, oh, if you have a specific item, you can choose this one. Otherwise, go on to the next one. And because of the way it's written, you can't really go back. What I mentioned that I really like is a skill test. I think those are really cleverly done. And am I getting past the rules and into the gameplay? Maybe so.
But the real question is, who's going to stop him?
Yes, nobody. Nobody will. Excuse me. The rules are very cleanly written. The story is interesting and well written. So I think it's a really good book. I'm really, really happy with it. And I think I mentioned it's only $12 for the physical book on Amazon. It's a print on demand, so it's going to be printed somewhere local to you, and you will get a copy pretty quickly, right? Probably within a few days. My experience with Amazon print on demand is that it's pretty hit or miss. I've bought stuff from them before where the pages are falling out of the book as I read it, and I bought others that are better, and that's unfortunate. But that is definitely not anything to do with Fervent Workshops. That's totally their choice of using Amazon. Okay, so gameplay. Any questions so far, Julius?
No.
Okay. So the gameplay, as I said, you're gonna read a paragraph or a couple paragraphs. You're gonna read the entry, then make some choices, make some rolls potentially, and based on how you do and what you choose, go to some other page, and keep playing through the story. Your goal is to either succeed, to survive, or to have a victory ending. Either of those two are good. Victory is definitely better than surviving. You will probably die as you play. It's expected that you're going to die, multiple times. But when you die, and I'm kind of jumping back and forth, you're going to make a character first before you ever die. You're going to make your character, and you're going to roll first to see what the type of character it is, whether it's a fighter, wizard, thief, bard, whatever. There's 6 different ones. You roll 2d6, and from the 2 numbers you got, they each are associated with a class. Pick one of those 2 classes that you rolled, and that's what you are for this round. That will give you your different attributes: your strength, dexterity, wit, and also your vigor, which is your health points. Once you've done this, then you start playing and making your choices, rolling dice. Your attributes at starting are either a 1 or a 2. And they work a little different depending on the type of skill check. If you're doing a strength check, it's how many dice you roll. And when you're fighting a creature, it'll tell you to succeed, you need to roll higher. Like, for example, the introductory scenario, you have to roll 2 or higher on a d6. So really easy. If your strength is 2, you get to roll 2 dice. As long as either one succeeds, you made it. If they're both a 1, then you lost that fight. Dexterity is interesting. It's actually a dexterity test in that if you have a dexterity 3 test you got to do, you're going to stack 2 dice up, and then from 3 inches away, you're going to flick another die at those 2 and try and hit them. If you hit them, you succeeded the dexterity check. If you missed, if your dexterity rating is higher than 1, you could try again. It's one try per dexterity point that you have. So I really like how you're actually doing a dexterity check to test your dexterity skills. Wit is similar in that it's a thinking puzzle. You're going to roll a number of dice. The higher the difficulty for this roll, the more dice you have. So a wit 3 difficulty might be really simple, or one that's 5 is really hard. And what you're doing is you're rolling the number of dice that it tells you, and you need to get them in sequential number from 1 through 5. If it's 5 dice, 1 through 5, or 2 to 6, they just have to be sequential, no gaps in between. So you're going to roll the dice, and then based on your wit's rating, for each point you have one action that you could take. You could either flip a die to its opposite side, you could add 1 to a die, or you could re-roll a die. So the more wit points you have, allocated to wit, the better your odds of getting that straight. So, it's kind of neat because you're actually thinking about this and using your brain trying to figure out how to succeed the skill test. And I think that is really cool. I really like how the tests feel super thematic based on what they are. I find the wit kind of hard. Unless you have a high wit score, it's pretty much luck. If you're rolling 3 or 4 dice, you kind of just need to get it straight off the beginning, or your chances are you're not going to make it. The dexterity one tends to be much easier. I have found that even at a high challenge of say 5 inches away or 6 inches away, I can usually hit most of the time now. After a few games, I've gotten pretty good at judging how to do that. It's a skill I now have, Julius. If I ever need to flick 2 dice from up to 5 inches away, I'll probably succeed at hitting them. That'll get me far in life, I know. One thing, it's probably in the components section of our discussion. One thing I like, the character sheet that comes with the game, when you print it out, it actually has little notches on the side of the page marked, little hash marks to mark off the inches. So when you're doing your dexterity check, you could use that as a guide to figure out how where the dice have to be. So that was a pretty neat design. I really like how the game was designed. So that is it in terms of the rules of the game, the gameplay. You're going to be reading passages, making skill tests, or just making choices and exploring this place and traveling and reading the story of the game until you finish. And then it says, if you lose, if your character dies because you run out of health, or you reach an enemy and says, "Oh, sorry, you died," you start over, but now you could take any experience point that your character has earned and apply them to the next character to raise your basic skills. So you could increase that wit or your strength or even your vigor and have more health, more hit points to start the next character. Presumably, you'll keep dying and keep doing that. So if your character dies again, maybe you get a little farther. Now you got more experience, more health, more experience points, and you can make an even better character. That is the overall feel of the game. This will probably be a fast episode because, again, it's
a small game book.
It's a small game. There's not a whole lot of variety in it, and I find that role-playing games in general, I find it harder to have as much discussion on them. Maybe because I'm just not as experienced with that. Oh. Maybe because they all tend to be pretty small. So this one, I think the other thing that's worth discussing is the story. I'm not going to get into the story too much and give spoilers and all that. Well, maybe I'll give a little bit of spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, turn away, but I'm not going to tell you how to win. The story, you wake up underground in a cell and you don't really remember anything, but your arms have this black growth on it, like some sort of a tar-like growth or something. And it's creepy and it kind of doesn't feel well. And you find your arm that has that feels weak. You have no idea who you are or what, but all you know is you need to get out of this dungeon to solve this problem. And then you start playing. So you explore some caves and you quickly learn that they're goblin caves, and you're going through. you're making different choices, and as you do that, eventually you get outside. This game is told in two parts. There's first the underground exploration part, and then the above ground exploration part. I like that it felt very distinct. It feels like the story has changed when you shift from one environment to the other. And it definitely, to me, it definitely felt very different. Suddenly, my goals were different. What was going on just felt very different, and the tenseness of the story just changed everything about it. So I thought that was really well done, very well written. Um, I find that the first half is less important in terms of getting to the victory. The second half, the choices you make there, I think, more clearly lead to a victory or loss. But the first half has a lot of exploring and setting things up so that you're able to succeed more in the second half. It also will give you information that things that as you learn about yourself and your character's backstory that help unlock information that might lead to the choices you make in the future. I don't think it's critical, but it is important. And again, it feels different.
Here's one of my bigger issues with these. How much do you feel that you're affecting it? Is this more like a book where you're not really affecting, you're just enjoying for the story, or do you feel like this is more of an actual game where you have a lot of effect on the outcome?
I mean, you definitely have. It feels like a game. There's some times when you go and you have a choice. It's like, and let's say it's a scenario I've already been to. It's like, oh, I really know that I want to go to door number 3 instead of door number 2. Well, it's a skill check, and if I fail that skill check, there's no way I'm going to get to door number 3, no matter how badly I want to get there. And my ability to get there depends on what else I chose to do earlier, as well as my current attributes and how well I roll. So some things definitely feel very gamey. As you play, though, there's a lot of areas you encounter. You say, "Oh, this is important. I want to be able to visit this next time I play," because it unlocks certain things that I could then take advantage of later. I don't think you could visit every location in the game. There's forking choices, and later on things regroup. And I haven't fully explored or even tried to map it out, and I don't think I ever would. But this underground area enough that I don't think it's possible to do all the choices. You end up making decisions about which way you want to go and what things you will encounter. Like you couldn't do a perfect run through where you got all the power ups and all the unlockables and that sort of thing. To give a video gamey comparison.
These kind of things don't excite me a whole lot, which is why I wouldn't be making a recommendation for it. It doesn't feel amazing to me to play through a mostly narrative game where you're doing a lot of reading and not a lot of playing. But there's not a lot of decision makings where, again, I've made comment before. I enjoy games where when I finish it, I feel smart. I feel like it was my actions and my effects that caused the outcome of the game to go a certain way. And this kind of thing just doesn't win me over as suggesting that you're going to get that.
It's definitely lighter of a game. It's more of a luck based game than that. It's like a Barbarian Heroes, an older game that you're exploring the world and making choices and rolling dice. And that was a game where it was super random and chaotic. And what you got after playing it is a story, not a challenge of your intelligence or anything like that. And that's what you get out of this. You get the story, the experience of going through it and unlocking the different parts of the story. Like I said, you can't unlock it on a single play. You're gonna have to go through and do multiple plays and visit different locations to try different things. The game, it says there's, I think, 4 or 6 victory endings, and to get to them, they're totally different. As a matter of fact, in the appendix, it mentions, "Oh, here's 4 achievements. If you've accomplished this goal, cross it off. Try and get all the different achievements." Those 4 achievements are 4 different victory endings. So you're never going to be able to do all 4 in a single play. You'd have to play multiple games to find those endings. I have found one of them so far, not all of them. I haven't played too many times. I've played 5 times now, 4.5 maybe. And I have found one victory ending, and my other endings have either been deaths or just successes. And after the last play, I was like, "Oh, I think I want to try this. Go over here. I haven't done that yet, and maybe there's something interesting there." Because the endings from reading the appendix are rather different. And I don't think I'm giving anything away if I read the appendix. It's not part of the story. But here's the four things you can unlock. Find professional success via the middle city. Live happily ever after with the gnomes. Destroy the monastery with the goblins, or transcend this existence with the fairy. So those are 4 different endings you could achieve that are victories. And not only do you need to achieve them, you need to find those. So you need to not just survive, but reach those victory endings. Very different. I haven't even seen half that stuff that it's talking about. The one I've done is destroy the monastery with the goblins. We went on a rampage, and that was fun. That was really weird and neat ending. That was not something I was expecting to happen in this game. I think, I know what you're saying about the game is not going to challenge you a lot. I think what this game shines is that it's pretty portable. It's a book, so you could easily take that with you somewhere and, I don't know, play at a coffee shop or something and pull it out. It doesn't take up a whole lot of space. You need just a little bit of table space to write on. And when you're doing the die rolling, right, the dexterity check, you're flinging the die from up to 5 inches away. So you need some space to do that. And if the table's really small, say you're doing a plain tray table, you're going to flick that die and it's probably going to fall off the table. So that's a little bit too small. But it doesn't really need much more space than that. And that's what's neat about it. It's super portable. You could take it with you. You could play it somewhere while you're waiting for something or whatever. If you're a person that has to wait for things, I guess. Whatever that means. And it works well. What I found I don't like too much is that it says you're going to die multiple times, and you're just going to have to do that and gain the experience points and spend them on your subsequent characters and all that to get better. It's after a while, I'm kind of like, I kind of don't want to go through the underground part again. I really don't want to have to do that. It feels repetitive, going through the same things. Every time I've played, I have not gone to the same exact paths, even in the underground. I definitely am revisiting things over and over that are super familiar. But I feel like every time I've come across something that is a little different. I find that after repeated plays, that will get a little old. Fortunately, they do have a workaround. When you get out of the underground, there's actually a save point. And you can choose to now, if you have met certain criteria in terms of experience and that sort of thing, you could choose to save your character. Now, anytime you restart, you could restart from this point. You don't no longer have to do the underground part if you don't want to. And you restart with the character that you saved. So all the experience that he already had, that's now yours to keep forever, as you just do the second half of the game. That's another pretty clever mechanism. Saves you the trouble of having to redo everything. Because it's not the sort of game where I don't feel like otherwise you can just say, I'm just going to start from somewhere else this time and see, unless you specifically save the character from that point, because there's things you get that you'd have to record it and write down. I didn't mention it, but you can find items, and it uses a system of keywords that you write down the keyword, and they're slightly cryptic when they're written down. They tend to be abbreviated. Like if it says, mark down that you have BHG. So you write down BHG. BHG is just a big handful of gold. But the acronym is BHG. And, these things that you write down, as far as I know, they're all useful later on. I don't know about the BHG. Maybe some are red herrings or not. It's a neat game. It is kind of cool. It is interesting to explore. There's a lot of things I like about this. I love the skill checks. I like the save points. I like those things you could find and pick up and use, and how they come in handy later on. They unlock certain parts that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get to. And that's one thing that happens. You're playing and you get to a point and says, if you have item, JJC, you can choose this option. I don't even know what that is. Now I got to play again and see if I could find that. So I could unlock this area and see what's back here. Maybe nothing important. It may add to the story. It may give me a super powerful artifact. I don't know. It's a neat game. I liked it. I was pleasantly surprised by this. It plays quickly too. I think a single play probably lasts maybe half an hour. The entries tend to be pretty short. They're a page, maybe 2 per page. The quick reading, and it's all well written. I think I mentioned that too. Yeah, so I like it. There we go. That is What Lies Beneath.
And for me, I'm going to let it lie beneath. It doesn't sound particularly interesting to me. It doesn't sound dynamic enough to interest me as an in-depth sort of play. If I want to read a book, I'll read a book. When I just roll a die to figure out which page I want to go to, it doesn't feel like something I want to invest time in. So
yeah, no, I get that. There's other game books, like if you wanted something that was more interactive, you could do the Fable Lands that we talked about last year. But I also found that one a little fiddly. Going to the pages and doing stuff just felt more fiddly and more repetitive because I kept backtracking. This one, there isn't much backtracking. There is one place where I found a loop, and I went back, and I wasn't sure how to do this. I found a loop, and then I go back to the location I've been to, and it says, "Oh, you find 3 crates. Do you want to open these up and get some good stuff out of it?" So I go, "I already did. Can I do it again?" It's not clear to me how I should treat this, so that was interesting. But yeah, there we go. Enough said.
All right. Well, I'm ready to let this one lie where it is.
All right, Julius. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at julius@oneplayerpodcast.com or JLBird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at albert@oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractalute on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan Elduce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.